Greetings, and welcome to Cril Inspires, the YouTube channel where I will be giving insight and guides on best steps to create a successful interview podcast or even just develop a successful interview podcast if you've already started the process. So, today I want to talk about a topic from my book, Creating a Successful Interview Podcast, a how to guide, which is currently available as an ebook on Amazon. And this guide is guide number 5, entitled Creating Questions Based on Guests' Personality, Temperament, their work, and experience. So let's start by just saying why this is important, right? This guide is important because it provides for a smoother, greater rapport with your guests while you're interacting during the interview. And it just provides better chemistry overall during the interview. Okay. So let's talk about personality. So, how do you create a good understanding of your guest personality? So, one of the things you can do to get that knowledge is to research your guests, right? And that could be as simple as observing how they interact on social media or even how they interact and communicate in person if you've actually met them in person. Also, knowing about their interests. What are the things that they like? What are the things that they like to talk about? What are the things that they're passionate about? Also, even researching maybe interviews they've done and how they've responded to some of those interviews. So that's a good way to get an understanding of your guest's personality. Now, as far as their temperament, this one is important. And this particular tip in general is a tip that I had to learn from experience, right? In my 13 years of doing interview podcasting, I learned a lot, and I learned from mistakes I made. I learned from just my overall experiences. So this knowledge didn't come overnight. So the beautiful thing, however, is that I'm able to share it with you so that you can hopefully avoid some of these mistakes. But in regards to temperament, it's really important to understand how your guest is feeling in that moment. This really applies to situations where you may interview someone in person. So if it's an artist and you are interviewing them after a concert that they do, you want to be mindful on what their energy is like after the show. It may be a situation where you may have to reschedule the interview if the guest is not in the right frame of mind to do the interview the way that you intended to be. So it's something you're going to have to gauge. But let's just say, it's a situation where this is the only time you're going to get to do the interview, then you may have to switch up your questions based on the current temperament of the artist. Now, if the artist is more relaxed and wants to laugh and joke, you may want to make your questions a little lighter. If they're a bit more serious, then you can go with, some deeper questions. But it's very important to gauge what the temperament of the guest is before you go in with your questions. And you may have to switch things up in the last minute. Also, this applies, I know I gave the example of artists, right? But this could also apply to any type of guest that you interview, right? Know their temperament. If it's after a book signing and they're an author, they might have been bombarded by a lot of people and their mind frame may not be in the best mind frame to give you their undivided attention or to really talk about subjects that may be deep. You might want to be a little light in your interview questions. But also a good thing is to assess the situation, right? So, if it's after a book signing, maybe you want to switch up your questions and ask about what that book signing experience was like. What was the most memorable thing you got from this just experienced book signing, right? So think about their frame of mind, where they are, and then ask questions based on where you think their temperament is. The next, and I think is probably the most important out of all of these, is making sure that you do research on the guest's works and experience. So that's really important because research will set your interview apart from other interviews where people just wing it. Okay? Research, it enables you to have a firm understanding of the guest's body of work, right? So if they're artists, you're researching their music. If they're an author, you're researching their literary works, right? At the very least, have a good understanding of the variety of their literary works. Even if you're not able to read all of their works, at least have some talking points from some of their works that you have researched. Okay. Why that is helpful is because it will open up the opportunity for greater dialogue, right? You'll have things that relate specifically to what they are experts in, right? And guests really enjoy and like when a, a host has done the research because it makes them more excited to communicate, right? They really value that, so don't ever underestimate the value of research. Also, do not try to wing interviews unless you're in a last minute situation and you didn't prepare. Winging interviews put you in a position to have a very cliche interview, a interview that does not stand out, and also the guest is not as excited as they would be if they see that you've done your research. Okay. So be mindful of doing winged interviews where you haven't done research. Okay. One of the tips that I talk about in my book, Creating a Successful Interview Podcast, which is actually the bonus tip right after this one that I'm talking about right now, it's entitled Kril's Creative Approach to Artist Interviews. And I'll share a little bit about that. So, as you guys may already know, my interview podcast, Out the Box Talks, is based on doing interviews with artists, right? Music artists. So, one of my go to ways to use this research approach is to research the artist's music, right? So, I study their music and I ask questions based on the subject matter of their music or the lyrics in their music, but I also do it from a place that resonates with me. So I may stumble upon a lyric that makes me say, you know what? I'm interested to learn more about this lyric because there's something about this lyric that resonates with me. And that enables me to have a great conversation with the guests. Majority of the times the guests are really happy with the interview because they see that I did my research. They like talking about their music, they like talking about their lyrics, because a lot of people don't take the time to study their works like that, right? So it yields for a good response by the guests, and it also is intriguing for the audience because they get to learn about the music that they like from this guest, and it enhances that experience, right? So you don't, if you're not interviewing music guests, you can apply this to other guests as long as you're using their works, right? What are they known for? They're a filmmaker. You study their movies and you ask questions based on what resonates with you in what you see and experience watching their movies. If they are a fashion designer, you study their designs, right? You study their fashion and you ask questions based on what resonates with you in regards to their designs. It doesn't matter who the person is. Study their works and come from a place of what resonates with you. Okay? That will always put you in a unique place, because even if someone else used the same approach of studying their works, the questions will still be different, because you're asking questions based on what resonates uniquely with you in regards to their works. Okay? And 9 times out of 10, even if the guest has been asked a same or similar question, they're going to have a different response in most cases, right? So keep that in mind. Researching their works and their experience is extremely important. So you could go a step further and not just research their works, but also research some of their experiences, right? And their journey. The more you know about the guests, the more intriguing and enticing your questions are going to be. Okay. So that's pretty much it for this guide. I do want to mention before I jump off this video is that I am currently doing virtual coaching. So if you are someone who is struggling to create your successful interview podcast, right? You are having difficulty. Maybe you started the podcast and you need a little bit more support with developing the interview podcast, please definitely reach out to me. The beautiful thing about the coaching sessions is that I'm able to work with you based on your unique needs, right? So I have this discovery session where you're able to explain to me what it is your challenge is, where you're stuck, where you would like help, and I can offer valuable advice on the best next steps for you to take on your interview podcast journey. Okay? I'm definitely here to help, and I want to make sure that I support your specific needs and desires with your podcast. All right? And even if you're just starting out in trying to start a general podcast, you could also reach out to me for support. So the booking link is in the description of this video. Please feel encouraged to also subscribe to the channel if you like what you're seeing in terms of the content, and share it if you feel like someone else could benefit from it. I thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video today, and I will see you on the next video. Peace, love, and light. Talk to y'all later. Take it easy.